We've just ended a 4-year period of the media having to respond to the fact that every day there's a million news stories. The 5th biggest news story of any one of these days would have dominated the Obama era news for days at the very least. We're hopefully moving out of that time in terms of Trump's crazy statements, crazy policies, all of that. And so my concern is that we might be moving into a time much more like before Trump, where now we're gonna pretend that all of that didn't happen and look for tiny little things to blow out of proportion to become brown suit scandals and latte salute scandals and those sorts of things. And so I wanna talk about something that we mentioned earlier in our coverage, and that is that Biden apparently has a problem. I don't know if you know this, it's his Peloton. It doesn't exactly comport with his regular Joe from Scranton persona, they say, and then also something about cybersecurity. So that maybe potentially is an issue. But the idea that this article, which is up on the New York Times, as well as the Seattle Times and other places, says that his regular guy from Scranton persona could be undercut by the fact that this 78-year-old rides a Peloton at home and that his wife rides a Peloton. Cenk, what do you think?
Okay, I'm of two minds on it. Number one, are you kidding me? I mean, that didn't take long. We're back to complaining about mustard on burgers and tan suits and saluting while holding coffee. Really, are we gonna do this? And so, number one, I'm not having a conversation about false equivalency between a violent coup to murder your vice president and democracy and a Peloton bike. We're not having that conversation. So end of this. Now, having said that, there's a second reason why it's in a sense almost more nefarious, because talking about Joe Biden's policies on healthcare in the middle of a pandemic is much more challenging. That would actually be holding Biden accountable, and the press doesn't really want to do that. Because so if the first article was Joe Biden says you should get your vaccine for free because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but he says your overall healthcare should not be free. And if you cannot afford your bills, the insurance companies should bankrupt you. Well, that would be an interesting and important policy challenge on day one, but they're never gonna write that. They're not gonna write it. They're not gonna write it because they're on his side on that. So the Peloton thing is both absurd false equivalency, but also a release valve to make it appear as if they're challenging corporate power in this country when they're doing the opposite.
Yeah, and look, obviously, this is an article. We'll see. The reason I'm putting it on the show is because of the fear that this is the opening of the floodgates. That it is a two-part thing. It's the media sort of going back into the model that you laid out so well, but then also some of the politicians going back into the same pattern. So something that we've been expecting and predicting, we've talked about on the show over the past year, is like in anticipation of the election, is happening now. During Janet Yellen's hearing, was it yesterday? You had Republican senators bringing up how we need to start taking the deficit seriously and the national debt, that these are massive things that suddenly should be a focus. Like whatever Biden plans to do or tries to do should be viewed through the lens of we have to get our fiscal house in order, after literally years of those senators not giving a damn about that whatsoever. And we were predicting it because it's a pattern that we've seen. Just like the Peloton, this is a cycle that we go through seemingly every 4 years. And my fear is that not just that they'll do it, but that it's gonna be sort of like you were talking about early in our coverage today, that the Democrats present themselves as better managers and more responsible managers. And if you're responsible, then you're the one that takes care of the deficit. And so you do austerity for 4 years or 8 years, just long enough to not deliver anything for the people so that you can then hand over this new renewed financial situation for America to the next Republican president who can immediately throw $2 to $3 trillion to the wealthiest people in America and jack up the defense budget. And so I fear that we're moving into sort of a media political complex that's designed to hem in and limit the Democrats. The Democrats are gonna step eagerly into that new pen. And that is going to raise the odds that we get a Republican. Like we, for decades now, have been going back and forth between Democratic and Republican administrations. They don't have to win the popular vote to do that, but they do get the presidency in the end. And so I'm already worried about Biden, thanks to the media and the other politicians, potentially creating that same situation in 4 or 8 years, that we're just gonna hand things back over, he's not gonna deliver.
So John, you're opening up a giant conversation there, because one of the biggest mysteries in the next 4 years is how the media is going to handle things. If they go back to politics as usual, which is the more likely route, much more likely, right? We're gonna have an absolute rebellion online. And then how does that rebellion online interact with the mainstream media? Because when they say deficits, after being absolutely silent for 4 straight years on deficits, as the Republicans murdered our budget and put a $2 trillion hole in it for tax cuts for the wealthy. No, I'm not having a conversation about deficits. None for the next 4 years, none. If you dare bring it up, you're an absolute liar. You don't care about the deficit. I don't care if you're Jake Tapper or you're Mitch McConnell or you're Joe Manchin. You didn't say anything the last 4 years as you all got tax break after tax break after tax break. I'm not going to abide by your goddamn lies about how you're concerned about the deficit, but only when we could help the average person because a Democrat is in office, but never when a Republican is in office to help all of you multimillionaires. Hell no. So we will go to war over that, mainly with the mainstream media. But Biden and Manchin are part of the game. They want to throw the game. It's a rigged game in favor of the wealthy. Let's call it what it is. So, and lastly, John, the one good part of the Peloton story is there ain't no regular Joe, and nobody believes it. The only people who believe it are the people inside Washington. He was a regular guy back in Scranton approximately 2 million years ago. He was half a regular guy in Delaware 1 million years ago. He took the train back and forth. He was the poorest senator. I got it. But he's been in Washington for 47 years. I don't know a single politician more establishment than Joe Biden. He's one of the most esteemed senators of not just my lifetime, in American history. He was vice president and president. Don't tell me he's a regular Joe. Only people in Washington believe that. No one in the rest of the country believes he's a regular Joe. He's part of the establishment, and regular Joe is just marketing mythology. So I'm past it, it's absurd. I never believed it in the first place. Let's get real.
Let's get real. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.